with the weird name. I'm Kaave.
Yeah, and I'm the one with the more traditional name, Simon.
Today we're going to talk about Space 10, and we're going to talk about how we work with design, how we see design, and also how we see the future of food. But to begin with, we would like to talk a little bit more about Space 10. Space 10 is a future living lab. To begin with, when we sold in the idea of building Space 10 to IKEA, we sold them the idea of this quote. So what we believe is that the secret of change is to focus all of your energy on not fighting the old, but building the new. We thought, how can we make IKEA move faster? How can we make them be more agile, be more flexible? Everybody talks about startups as the ones moving fast, and the companies being the old guard who is too slow and they don't really follow the pace. And we were like, how can we then build a space that can enable all this? So we put up 6, you could say, visions of what Space 10 should be. First of all, we wanted to build a space where we could experiment and co-create new ways of designing for a better future. Second of all, we wanted to build a space where we could look into new directions and explore emerging potentials. So IKEA is a big company. They work all over the world. You have them also here in Taiwan. There is 160,000 people working for IKEA, and they have more than 10,000 products in the range. So everything they do takes time, and when the train has left the station, it doesn't stop. So sometimes with big companies, they only look ahead, and they can't look around them. So we want to be the space where we could make sure that we could stay curious, that we could discover stuff that maybe to begin with they would think was a bad idea. Sometimes it is a bad idea, but to really have a space where we could be free and explore. But we also wanted to build a community around IKEA and around Space 10, a community of global experts and forward-thinking experts. So at Space 10 we say that if we are the smartest person in the room, we are in the wrong room. And basically we have to always have people around us who are more smart than we are, because we have so many different tracks and themes that we are exploring that we can never be experts in all of them ourselves. Neither should we. So we have a lot of interesting people coming in who is way smarter than we are, and we like to keep it like that. This one was really hard to convince them to say yes to, because we wanted to also build a space where we could test and try ideas in a non-commercial environment. So normally if you're a business and you have to give some money to somebody, you want something commercial in return. You want to know that there is some money ahead. You want to make sure that you're not just wasting it on weird stuff in some weird space you haven't even seen yet. But it was really important for us to make sure that if we are building a space that should be able to explore the future, we don't always know if it's a good idea. We don't always know if there is a business case. So, for example, if you work with technology, if you put a commercial agenda on a technology too fast, you don't use the full potential of that technology. Often there is some marketing guys and they say, good technology, we can use it to push advertising. Yes. But people think advertising is very annoying often. So how can we make sure that we, for example, could use technology and look at how can we make this technology better for the world? Or how can we use the technology to use it in a different case that we didn't even expect was possible to begin with? And that's why to test stuff in a non-commercial environment to begin with enables us to have perspective on things. Also, we are not a secret lab, we are an open lab, and we are very aware that we are based in Copenhagen. It's a small little city up north of Europe, and we're not that big, and we are really aware that if an idea dies at us at Space 10, we don't really make a change. Then we just have a lot of fun, but nobody really feels the impact. So we want to make sure that people understand that we are open and transparent. We don't have a secret basement. We are very aware that the only way we can truly make innovation is by opening up. So there's a big difference between inventions and innovation. Invention is where you have to hide, because then it's something completely new nobody has seen before, and you probably have to protect your idea a little bit, because an invention takes time to achieve. Where innovation is basically just taking stuff that is already out there and putting it into a new context. So what we do is that we develop new ways of storytelling and sharing both our successes but also our failures. And especially Simon, who's director of communication, has a big job on communicating everything we do. But we can see that every time we share what we do, people, they reach out to us and say, hey, okay, that was a really nice idea. I'm also working into this field. How can we collaborate? And by opening up, you're not losing anything, actually. You are gaining a lot. And last but not least, this should be a playground for IKEA to come and meet this community and be inspired. So at Space 10, we take fun and play extremely serious. And some people are like, what do you mean by that? But we truly believe that if people don't think stuff is fun, if they don't feel engaged or inspired or aspire to do what they do, they will only do 90% good. They will just do it and they will leave when they are off work and they will go home and then they will have fun. And you know, that's not a way to really achieve change. You have to make sure that people really believe that what they do is powerful and impactful and fun. And especially at IKEA, who is having this everyday life that we want to change a little bit and make sure that they are also engaged and empowered a little bit more. We have to make sure that when you come, you have fun. This is the space. It's a little empty here because there's no events, but the exhibition space is here, and this is where we work. This is the kitchen. We call it the Meet, Eat, Read room. I don't know if you can guess what we do in the room. And this is the building. We also have more on the side, but this is from one angle. And it's based in the meatpacking district of Copenhagen, 5 minutes from the central station. Just to wrap up this first part, so basically what we believe or what we vision with the space is to design an interface for innovation. And interface is often something we associate with something digital, like Uber, Airbnb, Kickstarter. They are all interfaces bridging a lot of people. But we also believe that interfaces should be both digital and physical with innovation. So we want to be the space where people, they come, meet and interact. So it's not always us who do it. It's not always us who creates the idea, designs the idea, distributes the idea, but we are the space where people come, meet and interact with it. And we believe that's where the innovation becomes scalable. The way we then have structured all this or designed ourselves into some order, I mean, it's very chaotic at Space 10, I have to say. We love organized chaos. We love to be organized, but we love to organize the chaos and not just be completely strict with everything. The first part is the theme. When you're so many involved in a project, it's not only the office, it's also the community. We have to make sure everybody understands what it is we are exploring. What is the themes? And the theme for us is future living. Super broad. Way too big for anybody to ever find the final golden answer to, but we are really interested in how are people living in the future. And not only how can we fix the problems of the future, we are also interested in how we can enable new dreams of the future. So if you ask one, what frustrates you about the world? What problems do you want us to fix? The person comes with one type of answer. If you ask the same person, what do you dream of the future? What do you dream of the world? They will come with some different answers. And I think as a designer, it's our job and our responsibility to not only fix problems, because if you're fixing a problem, you just come to zero. Because if it's a problem, it was done badly in the first place. So if you really want to succeed, you have to go beyond the problem. You have to actually understand what are people dreaming of to really make it impactful. And that's why we have a basketball with a watermelon inside of it. One of the trends we can see when it comes to future living is something I think you're all very aware of, and it's the urbanization. That people are flooding to the cities, and the cities are getting bigger, and we are more people in the city. I think the latest numbers UN expects is that 70% of the world's population, they will live in urban areas within 2050. That's 6 billion people. Right now there's around 4 billion people living in urban areas, so it's an increase of 50%, which is a lot of people coming closer. And we see that coming closer has a lot of effects. Some is good. It's easier to find a girlfriend or a boyfriend. It's easier to grab a coffee at a close cafe. But we also see that pollution is getting higher. We see that people are getting more lonely the more close they come to each other. We are seeing that it's harder to find an apartment. It's more expensive to find an apartment. There is a lot of different things that happens when people come closer. And what we are interested in, and that's the last, is what happens when we all get a little closer. Yeah, this is from Tokyo Public Swimming Pool last year. This is an extreme case of when people are coming extremely close. What happens is that when we come closer to each other, we start to act differently, and our behavior starts to act differently. So this is not only physically, it's also through technology, through digital services. We are more and more connected, and we are coming closer and closer to each other. And this is one of the primary focuses on Space 10, is how can we make sure that coming closer to each other equals something good. Another thing that is moving extremely fast at the moment is technology, and I'm sure we all have a smartphone in our pockets, some in our hands, some are already looking at it right now. And I think what is really interesting with technology is it's really exciting. I love technology myself in the office. We love it. We use it every day. We have a lot of different gadgets at the office, but at Space 10 we're also really aware that we can't be caught up in the gadget hype. And what we mean by that is that it's really easy to ask what technology will do for us. Where will technology take us? And read about all sorts of cool gadgets that we can use for something stupid. But who are we becoming as humans while we use technology? And I think this is something that we are truly interested in. If you're Facebook or somebody big in the tech world, your goal is to make people look at the screen as much as possible. But if you're not a technology giant and your work is about designing spaces, you have to be aware that that is not maybe only a good thing, that's also a bad thing in many ways. A lot of studies shows that if you're looking too much down, you actually have a higher risk of getting depressed because of your body language is you know, and that's the same where actually if you stand up and you look up, your body actually activates something in your body that makes you more happy. I think this photo speaks for itself, and this is definitely not a future we would like to achieve. Basically what we try to do is to see patterns where most see chaos. And that's the primary goal of Space 10. The way we do that is by many different, we have different tracks where we do different stuff, but one of our favorites is what we call the space program. And this is not about launching any rockets to the moon, it's about having a programmatic, community-driven approach. We do all sorts of weird stuff at Space 10 when it comes to the program. We do talks like this one, we have exhibitions, we have hackathons, we have workshops, we do collaborations with others. Some examples is a company from London who visited us and learned us about their project, and a company called Technology Will Save Us. We collaborate with TED. I don't know how many of you know TED, but they do great videos and great screenings. We had a VR lab together with the Documentary Film Festival where people were exploring how virtual reality will impact storytelling. We host parties with the startup community, and we have lunch and dinner discussions with Danish Design Center. And we have a lot of universities and students coming by. Because we believe that innovation is not only about creating results by doing something new, it's also about innovation is basically just the process of being innovative. So what we mean by that is that if you find a good idea and you stop and just go with that idea, at one point that idea will not be good anymore. And then you have to start over, and that takes time. And a lot of big companies, they can agree that it's really, really stupid and bad to just stop with one great idea. What we believe and what many big innovators believe is that no matter how many good ideas you find, you have to keep on finding new ones to make sure that when the first one dies, you already have a new one that is coming up. And sometimes it can be really hard to find time to keep on finding new ideas. So that's why we have forced ourselves to do it by making weekly or almost daily activities around subjects that we basically just think is fun or cool or interesting or yeah.
One of the key features of Space 10 is what we call playful research. We live in this Donald Trump era where people don't really care about facts or science or research. And we find a lot of research really boring as well. And I mean, the research and the science is fundamental in everything we do. That is really what pushes this world forward. But unfortunately, the format is also often really, really boring. Like thick reports that is gonna be written by academics and only be read by academics and only a few academics. And that is something that we want to change. I mean, we need to actually use the research that is being created out in the world, and that is why we have created what we call playful research. And now we're ready for the Tomorrow's Meatball project. Weirdly enough, Tomorrow's Meatball actually started with the idea of a smart faucet. We collaborated with some amazing interaction design students from Copenhagen, and they were tasked with designing everyday objects that sort of enabled a more sustainable lifestyle. And one of the ideas that came out of that project was a smart faucet. Like when you use too much water in the shower, it will sort of gently let you know that you are taking too long showers by glowing red. One of the really key things at Space 10 is that when we make a project, when we launch something, it needs to be relevant. And not just relevant in this could be funny kind of way, or this could be a funny little app or something. Like it really has to matter. So the first thing we thought about, we really liked the idea of this simple nudging. But we also started saying, okay, the shower is actually the last place we have left in our lives where we are offline, where we are alone. And do we actually really want to add technology into the shower as well? And water scarcity is a global problem. We know that. But we always have to question ourselves, like, is this solution the best solutions for the problem? So we started questioning, okay, how much water could we actually save in the shower if every person on the planet started just saving, 1 minute of shower, 2 minutes of shower, and found out that you could actually stop showering for 3 months, eat 1 burger, and you would have used the same amount of water. 2,400 liters of water it takes to make 1 burger.
Crazy.
That it takes so much water to produce 1 burger. And then we said, okay, maybe we shouldn't look at the shower, maybe we shouldn't disturb people in the shower, maybe we should actually start looking at the way we produce food. So that meant we wanted to trigger a conversation about more sustainable food alternatives. At Space 10 we don't believe in painting these dystopian scenarios where we all have to be really, really scared about the future. We really believe in an optimistic approach. And at the same time, we know that we are facing a challenge. We need 70% more food within the next 35 years. That's a lot. And the current way we produce food is completely unsustainable. Like, we cannot just continue. And we especially looked at the meat production, which is one of the big sinners when it comes to environmental impact and on how much resources it actually takes to produce meat, as you saw with the hamburger. So we said instead of painting this terrible future scenario, we actually said, okay, what alternatives do we have? Like, how could we actually produce a lot more food, a lot more efficiently, and without damaging the environment? We then defined 8 food trends that we thought were interesting for some reason or another. And then instead of writing this big 300-page scientific report on why these 8 food trends are really viable, we instead said, okay, let's make it playful. Let's make it something that people would actually show up on a Friday night in their spare time to actually listen to 2 guys talk about food trends. So what we did was then say, okay, let's make this playful. So we took IKEA's iconic meatball and said, let's use this as a canvas for the trends.
We used the canvas of the meatball we used the meatball as a canvas to project the trends. And the first one was the wonderful waste ball. So if we need 70% more food, maybe we should look at the 1/3 of the food we already produce that we throw out, and look at how we can use that in different ways. All of the meatballs have been designed in collaboration with an artist from Holland called Bas van der Poel. I can't even pronounce his name properly myself, and a food designer called Simon Caspersen.
The next one is the mighty powder ball, and I don't know if you've been to the exhibition, but a lot of these trends are exhibited in different forms at the really playful and interesting exhibition. But the mighty powder ball is basically soylent food or powdered food, and it's not because we envision a future where everybody just mix powder with water and then get a full meal. But we are actually facing some challenges with getting enough food for the many people, and one solution could be to actually start using much more powdered food in crisis situations.
Then there is the lean green algae ball, and basically this is about something I think you are very familiar with. It's a famous ingredient in the Asian region, and it's algae. And many call it the superfood. It's super easy to grow. It has all the right ingredients in it to have a healthy meal, and we see it sneaking in many more meals that we have seen before. A lot of people associate it with sushi, but we also see it now as an ingredient for powder-based soups. We actually know a startup called One Meal that are making algae-based soups, which is a really, really good in-between meal. So that's also something many experts believe will be way bigger in the next upcoming years.
Then we have the artificial meatball, and this is a food trend that I find very, very interesting. It's basically artificial meat, like either meat grown in a lab from muscle tissues from a cow. No cow has to die. You could actually grow the meat artificially. Or you could use other substances like vegetables, like a startup just launched the day before yesterday, Impossible Foods, where they make meat that tastes like meat, smells like meat, has the texture of meat, but it's not made of meat.
The next one I'm going to do short because it's quite obvious. It's the 3D printed ball, and basically it's food, 3D printed food. You can do it with many different ingredients, and more is coming. Then we have the nutty ball, and the nutty ball is basically all about going back to rice, legumes, nuts, a lot of the ingredients where you can get the proteins that you wouldn't get from the meat.
The crispy bug ball.
So basically 80% of the world's nations, they eat some sort of insects already now, and I think this is a perfect example of what we try to explain with this project. If everybody stopped eating meat and start eating insects, we would still be screwed. It wouldn't work, because then it would just be another problem. So the idea with this project is to show that we should eat more diverse food, and that we shouldn't put too much focus or too much pressure on only one sort of food or one type of food.
And then we have the urban farmer's ball, which is basically to start producing more food closer to where it's consumed. Instead of shipping food around the world, we could actually just start growing it within our cities. But when we make a project like this, we don't want Space 10 to be a storage place for research and for good ideas. So we really want to make sure that people actually engage in the work that we do. As we say, there's no innovation without a great story. If our ideas or our research doesn't really travel the web, it was probably not that good of an idea to begin with. And the reason why we really want to share everything we do is also to grow our community. We are a small team, so we are dependent on all the great minds out there in the world, and the only way that we are visible to them is if they actually know that we exist. But then what we also do was we created the Future Burger menu, and we actually had a lot of fun with that. We had some American journalists visiting Space 10, and we wanted to do a menu based on the food trends from tomorrow's meatball. So what you see is like a normal burger, but not that normal after all, because the beef is actually made out of insects, out of mealworms. The green and lettuce is made out of local produced farming. It has some grains in it from the nutty ball. You have the surprise fries, which is also insects, algae-based chips, and you have food waste used for the burger. But the funny thing was that when we presented it to the American journalists, they sort of got it. It was on the menu, it was really transparent about what we were serving, and then we actually had a big media crew here from Taiwan.
And now we are making a huge urban farmers ball. This one is a new project we're doing. It's a 4x4 meter big pavilion for an art festival that is one big urban farm. When we then looked at all those 8 future food trends, then we were like, which of these trends are most relevant for us and for IKEA? And there's a lot of them. But I'm going to disappoint some of you. We are not making a lab where we're going to grow meat tomorrow. It's not the plan, but we are extremely interested in the urban farmers ball and the whole idea of growing food locally. So we are building a prototype at the moment in the basement of Space 10 in an old freezer room. And we are basically building a full-scale hydroponic farm. It's quite small. It's not working 100% yet, but we have used it and are now getting some data in to understand it a little bit more before we build a bigger one.
And the plan, you could say, is the vision of actually being able to grow food within IKEA stores, where you could actually just have the leafy greens directly from a farm within IKEA stores.
This is the farm now. So basically, when we built the first version, we quickly realized that it wasn't the best way possible. We have to emphasize here that we knew from the beginning that if we have to realize this in a store, we wouldn't build it ourselves. But it was really important for us to build it ourselves the first time to understand how complex this project is. And now we are starting over again with a new team. We're actually looking for new collaborators. So if you know any hydroponic vertical farmers out there, please let us know. But the goal is to use the next months to build up a new prototype, get in the data, and hopefully already next year we can scale it up in a pilot somewhere in the world.
It's actually not that hard. It actually, the biggest problem is time, actually. I think we have been able to create an environment where there's constantly new people coming into the space, and I think that is the key with the way we have built Space 10, is to actually build on a community. So instead of relying on an in-house team to be creative and constantly push the boundaries, we make sure that we always get new inspiration by always bringing new people into the mix. And I think that is the key to success of Space 10, which is really arrogant to say when we have only been there for like 9 or 10 months. Like maybe in 2 months we are completely out of ideas and looking for work.
But I also think it's extremely important to look at not only what you or what your organization do, but also how it behaves. And a lot of people can be caught up on the output. Like we make products, or we make an app, or we are a food company serving this super nice crispy chicken burger. Or, you know, you always talk about the output, and you know, the output can always change. So you have to really make sure that how you behave as a company is keep on being relevant. And that's, I think, one of the biggest keys.
And last, I think also actually having a vision as a company or an organization that people actually supports, understands, and fulfill sort of their dreams as well. I mean, our company is looking into how can we create a better and more sustainable everyday life for the many people. And I think with a vision like that, you never run out of ideas on actually trying to achieve that, because, I mean, there's a long way to go.
I think actually this is a really, really good question, and something we discuss often at Space 10, because you can't really be both sustainable and then look at mass volume growth on the other hand without having some conflicts. And I think that's also one of the reasons why we at Space 10 have stopped at completely looking into product innovation. There's a lot of innovation within products already, and we are only looking into ideas and solutions where selling a product is not part of that equation. So basically, what would IKEA do tomorrow if they didn't only sell products? For example, the farm, I think, is a good example of how you can actually fight that balance and hopefully win. But it's a really, really difficult battle. I mean, also battle.
I also just want to add, like actually before collaborating with IKEA, it was actually something we thought hard about. Like, do we actually want to be part of this multinational corporation who basically uses 1% of all wood in the world? And then we started digging, started researching on what are their policies actually, like what are they actually beneath the sort of PR sugar layer. And then we found out that they are actually one of the biggest contributors to green energy, to women's rights projects, to do a lot of work for refugees, a lot of values that we could sort of align with and understand and identify with. And then I think at the same time, our job is also to provoke them, to actually challenge the way they do business now, to actually go in. I mean, if we don't provoke them, they don't need us. I mean, that is our job. So a recent project, we said, okay, what if we see waste as tomorrow's resource? If no new materials could go into your production, how do we design in a circular model where no new materials go in? Everything has to be recycled, remade, or made by biological materials that are biodegradable. And then we take the designers on a little field trip and meet a lot of startups, a lot of scientists working within this. And then we challenge them, provoke them, and move together. Because they're such a value-driven company that they are open to this if they get the right tools and if it's actually a viable business solution.
They freaked out. At that point, we only was open for 1 month. We did this project without telling anybody because I was personally afraid that they would shut it down before they could see the photos. And we made like, I don't know actually how we managed to do it, but we basically just sent it out before really telling IKEA about it. So many from IKEA only read about it on blogs and online. And we're like, what are you doing? Insects and lab-grown meat, you are fucking crazy guys, you know. You have to send everything to us and blah, blah, blah. But then they saw that the reviews were positive, and then they kind of liked it.
The meatball is so iconic for IKEA. It would be like dressing Ronald McDonald in women's clothes to sort of support human rights. Yeah, so it created a lot of disturbance. And yeah, I mean, like the headlines in the UK said IKEA is removing meatballs made of meat for environmental reasons. I mean, their communication department just went berserk. I mean, but it was a lot of fun.